and they all responded the same way at the same time. Yep.
Right.
So you need to write algorithms that can outsmart or predict what the other algorithms would do, so you can kind of do your own strategy thing, right? Okay. What else do you think requires math majors? Yep. Accounting. Okay, accounting by itself is a different major, but if you want to figure out the best way to utilize, the rules and the laws and whatnot, that might be an area where math can come in handy. Okay. Yep.
Logical thinking.
Logical thinking, very good. In programming, we will train people to think logically, but I would assume people who are in math, will think logically too. But it's different. Okay, math thinking in logical way is different from computer programming, because computer programming is sequential. We do one thing and then another thing and then another thing. In math, the truth is the truth, right? The only thing that's procedural or step by step is how do you prove a theorem is true. So they're different. They're really slightly different. Okay. What about engineering? Why do you think people in an engineering program, also need to take this class?
Critical thinking and problem solving.
Critical thinking, problem solving, very good. Basic skills. But what about the actual programming part? Do you think engineers will encounter actually opportunities to write programs?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Simulations.
I did read about a story about a Japanese programmer who actually used the Connect system and programmed his trash can to actually catch balls of paper as he tossed them in the air. It took him 6 months to program everything for the system, but once he did it.
Well, I can tell you the story of that's a good application of the combination of engineering and programming. Okay, I can tell you the story of my roommate, back in college, graduate school, and he was a mechanical engineering student thinking, well, I'm just doing mechanical engineering, I don't need to understand programming. So he didn't really take any programming classes, in his undergraduate courses. And his advisor wanted him to work on the program to do programmed machining. In other words, you give the system a solid model, like what something should look like, and a machine will try to mill out solid material to have that shape. So it's going to be done layer by layer. And the way it's done is by analyzing the solid model, so you can basically program the routing of the tool in an efficient way. So that turned out to be a programming project, and he had to learn C programming on the fly, and that was not easy for him at all, because it was kind of later in the game, and it was just difficult for him to grasp programming concepts. So programming is important. What about AutoCAD? AutoCAD is a computer-aided design software. Is there any computer programming portions to that tool? Absolutely. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, there's scripts in Illustrator.
Yep. Just about any tool can have scripting ability. Microsoft Word has scripting ability. Okay, you can write a script to automate things that can be automated. So this class is not really just helpful to computer science people, engineering people, or math people. Just about anyone, really should get a basic understanding of algorithms and programming these days. I'm just going to recite one of the stories from cisp300-3, so I'm sorry to bore those of you who were here a little bit earlier. But I think this is an interesting story, and people really should understand and see this as an example of a quickly changing reality. I was over at a conference in San Francisco over the break, and a taxi cab driver told one of the presenters and said, my job is going away. Okay, and you would think taxi cab driving is not something that can be outsourced. So why do you think that taxi cab driver said that? Yep.
Because people are having business meetings through Skype and other video chat services.
That's one. Okay, that's one potential reason, but that was not his reason though. His reason was because in some cities, including I think San Francisco is one, Phoenix was another one, I think Reno is one too. They have already passed laws to allow automated taxi cabs using the Google car technology, the Street View car technology. So they are now extending that technology to taxi cabs. In other words, you can probably call up a taxi cab station and tell the automated voice, use your voice to tell the automated attendant and say, I need a taxi cab here by a certain time and this is the address, and the taxi cab will drive itself to your location. You get into the taxi cab, you swipe your card first, they want to make sure that you have enough money, right? And they can tell the taxi cab, automated system where you want to go. And then the car will drive itself to the destination. The technology is here already, has been here for several years. Google has been using the Google car technology for a few years to capture all the street view images. Okay? That's where we are. Okay? This is no longer science fiction. If you watch Knight Rider, when I was a kid, okay, that kind of dates me, right? When I was a kid, I watched the original Knight Rider. I don't really care for the remake or the updated version of Knight Rider. The original version of the Knight Rider has a Trans Am, Pontiac Trans Am that is modified, has computerized, right? So the KIT for Knight Industry Technology. I waste my brain cells to remember all these useless stuff, right? So the main character, what's his name? Yes. So he would later on became even more famous from Baywatch, right? But he was much better in the Knight Rider, I think. So he would talk to his car on his, was it a watch? Yeah. And these days we do have cell phones the size of watches. Okay. So he would tell kid, I need you to pick me up at this location. We can do it now. Okay. Science fiction only from 10, 20 years ago is now reality. So, and that's why I think programming is becoming even more and more important these days. Back 20 years ago, programming is a very obscure kind of job, and only certain people would do it. And most people don't need to be exposed to programming. That's not true anymore. So what we'll do is I'm going to go here, which is the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they have this portion here that talks about occupation groups, computer and information technology, and then they have a table that talks about the occupation, job summary, entry-level education, and also the median pay in 2010. So you can kind of go over this and compare that to the occupation that you are interested in. And you can see that there's an increase every single job. Well, I wouldn't say every single job, but many of these occupations have a very good outlook in the near future. Okay, the high-tech industry is very it oscillates a lot. Okay, and it's actually out of phase, compared to mainstream industry. In other words, the tech sector can go really way up when everything else is down. And it can drop like a rock and everything else is going up. Okay? But overall, when you look at the industry as a whole, it has been going up gradually ever since a long time ago, ever since I would say the 70s. Okay? So I would like, I just want you guys to be aware of the different types of jobs, through this website. The median pay is important. I would not pick a job where the median pay is too low to support my family and stuff like that. But I think if you look at the job description and you enjoy doing that sort of thing, that's something that you should consider when you try to pick your major or try to pick your career. Besides, even if you like mechanical engineering, you should still consider getting computer science as a minor or double major. Okay, this is something that I keep telling people, telling my students and other people, is if you just graduate from a university with a single major, it's going to be pretty hard to find a job. Okay, because there's a lot of competition, not only within the United States, but some jobs can be outsourced. Okay, they're sending designs and some other jobs overseas these days. So how do you become more competitive? having a combination of skills is one way to make yourself very competitive. It depends on the depends on the combination. What do you do? What do you get when you combine biology with computer science?
Someone is good with possibly like APTs for creating new arms and legs and whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Body.
Bioinformatics. Okay. Yep.
AI.
AI, possibly if you are into like the brain, type of biology. What do you get when you combine accounting and computer science? Well, not stock market in that case, but you can figure out you can optimize how companies report their earnings, losses, and stuff like that. Finance, okay, if you combine finance and computer science, you get stock market projection, okay, analysis, and stuff like that. Okay, and those are very hot careers. I mean, they are very well paid. What do you do when you combine mechanical engineering, and computer science? Robotics. Okay, do you think robotics will be important in the next 20 years? Very. Yep. And what do you get? This is something that I mentioned already, but I forgot to mention this kind of career. What do you get when you combine mathematics and computer science, particularly graph theory and number theory?
TI Inspire. TI Inspire.
TIS.
Inspire. It's a Texas Instrument calculators.
Oh, okay.
Programmed
Not particularly that. Okay. Computer security, encryption algorithms, encryption theories. How do you crack encryption from other sources and stuff like that? Okay. Yep.
But also, if you combine math and computer science, I have a friend that does this. You can do research on how to compute better, like with processors and things like that.
Possibly. Yep. So the combination, does make someone, much more valuable to companies because, they know that you can understand this part, but also, the other part, that is important for a job.
Do banks use computer scientists or programmers?
I think banks don't really use computer scientists a whole lot.
How do they maintain their databases?
That's just database administrator and systems analyst and also software engineers. But they don't need research, top.
Somebody there on.
Yeah, they're not doing research. They're really just applying, what we already know. And most of that stuff is really just to make it happen. Okay, make the system happen, or refining it, make it more secure. But it's not really computer science scientists that they're looking for.
Programmers, they're not looking for.
They're looking for developers, programmers. Yep.
Well, typical company, I mean, before, it used to be you just had a website to advertise your products. Then eventually people were able to buy the products online. Then they were able to look up their account information online. And then eventually they could find anything they needed to know. Instead of calling somebody on the customer service desk, they could simply go online and find all that information. So it's basically automating everything that the company does.
Yes. And it
So
goes
it's
even further.
It's automation, isn't it, that we're studying?
It is automation. Computer programming leads to automation of all kinds. Okay. Now it can easily extend beyond what you just talked about. Like ordering stuff. With Amazon.com and many other websites, they also do analytics, which means they analyze what you order.